Hello, everyone. Before we start the podcast, I'd like to mention Pro Political Gear. Check out propoliticalgear.com for your political apparel today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Political Pod. I am your host, Chris Caputo, alongside me, my co host, Andrew Kornick. And sorry for the delay, guys. Really sorry about the delay here. Happy Easter,
Yeah.
happy Passover. I know it's all over, but forgive us for not uploading Friday's show. Let's get right to it.
Let me be clear.
You peddle false narratives.
Sexy boo.
We'll see who cancels who.
Watch me.
So to start off the day, we have this U.S. Supreme Court declines to allow West Virginia transgender athlete ban. So they actually vote against the ban, and don't forget it's 6-3 conservatives on that Supreme Court, and there's only two that disagreed with that decision was Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. I think that's how you say his name. Hope I got it right. It was a challenge brought by a 12-year-old transgender girl, Becky Pepper Jackson. What a name. That's a loaded question. Pepper Jackson. That sounds like a cool name, I'm not going to lie. Two conservative justices, as I just mentioned, they were the ones to decline it or to vote against it. And they said, no, we're going to pass this. So there was no ban there, which there's a lot of outcry from conservatives and Republicans. And yeah, so I think I know what you think of that, but what do you think about that, Andrew?
Well, there's also some other aspects to this case because obviously they're trying to challenge a law from going into effect in West Virginia that would ban transgenders from being in the sport of their gender identity. So yeah, this girl and her family are challenging it, and so far the courts they didn't give a reason why they didn't support the vote or why they didn't support the bill, minus the two who dissented it. So we don't really know too much in that regard. And the state of West Virginia already said they're going to keep trying to push this bill through. And obviously, as for my opinion, I think the bill is kind of unnecessary, as I've said many times. I don't really think it's the government's role to decide this issue. I think this issue should be decided by people who are like in the sports field and in the transgender community, because they're the ones who would know a lot about it more than like politicians who are kind of posturing. And especially with you know, they're targeting this community for their own like gain and whatnot. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think you said that previous times on the show, where you feel like the government shouldn't have a say in the matter. And obviously they are getting in. I think a lot of it is because of Title IX, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because that's the defense, right? Is the civil rights.
yeah. So it's a back and forth battle. Biden, he put his stance in with the trans athletes being in sports, but I noticed that there's outcry from the LGBTQ community because apparently there's schools that receive federal funding can still adopt policies that limit transgender students' participation, particularly in more competitive high school and college sports. So that's still there. Listen, man, I said my take on this a few times ago, and when it comes to women, I'm not a woman. I'm not a high school girl or a college girl that's playing sport, so it's very hard for me to gauge. Because if I were to be in a sport, I'd be competitive regardless of who I'm facing. But I can also understand how hard it is for them to compete against someone who is biologically a male, and I don't know, like, again, I don't know about like the person, the pills they take and all that just to make it onto the team, right? I don't know the consistency level for that, so it's very hard for me at least to gauge whether that's okay or not.
Yeah, I think that's fair to at least to abstain in that regard. But yeah, again, I think that people directly involved with the matter should definitely have a say. So
Yeah.
There's that.
I don't really have anything else to add to any of those two things that we just talked about.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I'll say though, in terms of I do think it's a bit disappointing that the Biden administration is kind of adopting this kind of like position to let them to still kind of grant these schools the ability to do that. Especially because for the most part, I think the administration has been pretty supportive of obviously LGBT stuff, but I think this some people are kind of reading this as like a sign of like early kind of like pivoting for election season. I don't know to what extent that's true, but I could see that. But in general, I definitely think it's not really the right way to go about it, to
mhm.
go about the issue, because it's like you're not really because you're never gonna satiate the people who truly like are full on into this, into banning this stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, if we're getting into the election, I mean that's a big topic right there. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think that really sways people. It's kind of like how, and I don't think we're going to talk about it on this episode, but how on people are not they don't care for the woke stuff being talked about by Republicans. See what I mean? I think this kind of falls in that category right there.
Yeah, the culture
Um,
war isn't really like
yeah,
something. It's more to satiate people. Like you're not really gonna like get people on your side. You're not like by kind of playing in the middle on the culture war. It feels like.
yeah. I think cultural war stuff is very iffy to get people on, and most likely you're not going to grab people who don't have an opinion on it. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to grab an independent off of woke mentality, whatever you want to call it. I don't think
Yeah.
you're gonna grab that. I mean, maybe, but
I think the
again,
border's another good example, right?
yeah.
Because I mean, Biden is pretty conservative on the border in terms of his policy record.
Be
Like
careful who you say
he
that
keeps a
to.
lot of these. Hmm?
Be careful who you say that to.
It's true though. I mean, what he does, like he's not really opening up the border in these ways that they pretend he is, but they still say it. It
No,
doesn't really matter what they
because
do
he
when it
didn't
comes
finish
to the
building.
culture war.
He didn't finish building the wall, so
Well, yeah, I
there's
mean
that.
but
Which
there's
I
there's parts of the wall that's gonna be built though. That did come out as well.
under his
Like he said,
administration.
he's yeah. Like he said, like it's not. I don't think they're building like all of it, but there's like patches of it that they have to build, and they're going through with it. They're not challenging.
I'm gonna have to look more into that one. If that's
Yeah,
the case,
and
I
obviously he kept Child 4.2 in place for a while. I mean, there's a lot of examples of
because the
the
last time I
administration.
heard on this, it was actually him about to do it, but his administration said, "Nah, maybe not. You just bombed Syria. Not a good idea. Don't piss people off right away." Um,
Yeah,
which they were the ones that tell him don't do it again.
when it
So,
comes to
yeah,
yeah, no, when it comes to the border, it's pretty like obviously the rhetoric is very different, but the actual like how they go about it is pretty similar.
I mean, a lot of people have been
Same with
detained.
Obama and stuff like that.
I don't have the number of people that have been detained. I don't want to spout out a number, but if I remember correctly, it's a large number of people that have been detained
Yeah.
by the Biden administration. I'm not saying that a lot of people aren't coming in, but yeah, we get a lot of people that are coming in. Don't get me wrong. Um,
Mhm.
that's of course, that's going on, but again, we talk about the Biden border issue, and if you're already locked in and already have your stance on the border, you want the wall, you want this and that. Most likely, you're not voting for the guy anyway, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's what you're trying to bring up here.
Like when it comes to voting like for culture war stuff, it's really just vibes, right? Like it's not on concrete positions. Is more my point. Like and trying to split the difference between like one extreme and the other when it comes to these issues in particular. You're not really there's not a lot of people who are like undecided often. And to the
Yeah,
extent
no.
they're kind of more drawn to one side or the other. Especially because there's so many other issues I think now, like abortion, for example.
But again, I think it's also people. There's a lot of people who don't care about any of that. The woke,
Yeah, like I think
just like the
to the
sponsorships or
extent that
wherever
there
it
are
is, right?
independent voters, they're gonna vote on things like the economy and like how things are,
Of
right?
course, because everyone's gonna go with their wallet at the end of the day. That's why you vote to benefit yourself. That's you come first. That's my mentality on it. You always supposed to come first. You think about yourself first because no one's voting for you. people can say, "Oh yeah, I stand with you, I this or that," but in actuality, they're voting for themselves first. And then if that's attached to it, then yeah, it gives them a morale boost, but a morality boost. But besides that, they're voting for themselves and what they can gain or what they can benefit from that. So, so yeah, definitely, I'm happy I put that out there. And it's
Yeah.
not election season right now, so it's not like it would have been more useful to say this more in like October maybe, but still, it is definitely still something to be put out there that I think that people should think about with primaries or general elections,
It's true.
right? So, like I said, I'm good. I'm good to move on. We keep talking. There's a lot. This past week, I feel like it's just like
A
the
lot of
past two
stuff.
weeks, and specifically a lot of like transgender stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff is coming from that side of the aisle with the LGBTQ and conservatives clashing. Especially, we see a lot of it on Twitter. Man, I scroll down and it's like the whole feed, like on our Twitter page, of course, right? You see a whole feed of just like talking about that one subject. So you've heard so many times on this show for the past probably 2 weeks. So I mean, you could tell it's you can tell that something's brewing here. And whether it's for the good or bad, I mean, that's for you guys to decide. You know where me and Andrew stand on that, so I'm ready to move on.
I agree. Now speaking of moving on, as you guys know, there was a shooting in Tennessee fairly recently, and as a result, there were protests in the state that was conducted by or it was helped run basically by the three Democrats in the state house for Tennessee. And basically, I mean, they protested inside the inside their state capitol, and as a result, I don't think anything, the extent to which there was like harm and stuff doesn't seem to be too severe based on what I read on it. But the majority Republican state house didn't like the uncivil and lack of decorum, so they conducted a vote to expel all three of the Democrats in the state house. Um, and there's out of the three, there's two black men named were funnily enough both named their first name is Justin.
I didn't know their names until I saw it here when you wrote it down.
Yeah,
That's pretty funny,
Justin
actually.
Jones, Justin Pearson, and then there's a older white lady named Gloria Johnson. So the two black dudes got voted out. Gloria Johnson barely held on by one vote, so she's still an elected official at the moment.
So, question on this. So, both these guys, were they just standing in protest? Did they do anything legally wrong, or what happened there?
I think they were just supporting like the protest, and they were like, I think they like a bullhorn outside the state capitol building or something. That's what I was trying to like look for something that could be like worthwhile, but based on what I read, I didn't see anything too crazy. And yeah, I think this is literally just kind of like we don't like that you're doing this, which
That's what it's coming off as, right?
yeah, and obviously this made national news. It's like a big deal. Like, oh my god, like elected officials just got like expelled from their positions of power, but like in a very undemocratic fashion. Because we're supposed to be a representative democracy, like the whole idea behind like things like the electoral college is okay, like small states should have representation. So inside this state, like sections of the state should have representation. But apparently, according to Tennessee, that they don't really agree with that. I guess like they think, okay, well, they don't agree with us, so they gotta go. So obviously very bad, especially because there's already a lot of discourse and fear that people have about potential like threats to democracy and people kind of like challenging elections and things like that. So it doesn't really play well for the Republicans already kind of in hot water for stuff like that. As for these elected officials, it is pretty likely that these two will be kind of re-put into their positions though, because obviously right now there isn't there's some, I forget like who exactly in the state government. It's like a city councilman or something is in their position, and there's going to be a special election to vote on them, and they can actually run that special election. And the state constitution actually mandates that if you cannot be expelled for the same offense twice.
Oh
So
wow.
it's pretty likely that they'll get revoted into there, because it's obviously like they represent the more liberal areas of Tennessee, right? It's not like they're running in like swing districts, to my knowledge. Maybe maybe one of them is, but still, I mean, they were basically incumbent, and I think the national headlines and stuff will kind of make it likely that they're going to be put back in there.
Which one all right, so did you differentiate both these guys? Like who exactly they are? Like who has the Andrew fro? Who's rocking your afro?
I actually don't know which one.
Oh, what a shame. Well, I know it's Justin.
It's Justin. Yeah.
Right? Um, but it's funny because and we saw this off the show.
Okay, it's Justin Pearson, I think, has like my hair.
He's the one that has the fro. I listen. I love the fro. I think the fro like works on certain people, and he's just rocking it. But the funniest thing I think I saw on this matter is that when we saw the video, I think it was on Twitter, and he sounded just like Martin Luther King. Like I don't know why he was speaking like that because I saw him in another video and it didn't sound anything like him. So it's like I don't know what the whole thing was. I don't know if it was just trying to like impersonate him just because of what it was on. I have no idea, but it was hilarious. Um, if anyone has seen that video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's hilarious. It really is. Definitely go check that out. What is it, Justin Pearson? Right?
Pearson.
All right. So if you've seen a Justin Pearson, if he has a similar fro to his, like I said, Andrew, you see it. He sounds just like Martin Luther King. I saw on Twitter. I was like, oh my god. I said, why does he sound like this? Like, you know what I mean, right? It's
Yeah.
like, it's like, all right, buddy, you're a little trying too hard. Can you please have a different voice here?
Different voice.
Please. I mean, I mean, that's people gonna compare him to that, but not because of what he's done, but because of just his voice. So uh,
Yeah.
be bold, be different,
True.
right? That's what I believe in.
There are people who also say that it was kind of racist that the black guys got expelled.
Yeah, I
Given the
mean,
nature of this specifically, I low-key could buy that though, to be honest, just because like they're basically expelling these guys for being rowdy, you know? Like, but that kind of hinges on like the one person that didn't vote to expel Johnson, but voted to expel the other two.
yeah,
So I don't know.
def-
I'm not in that person's mind, but it's definitely possible.
it's possible, but I'm not too sure on it. I know that was the case for Omar, right?
hmm
A lot of people were saying that. A lot of people were saying, "Oh, they
Yeah,
booed
I think
her
she
out
lost
because
like
of
committee
race."
assignments a while back, and yeah, it's definitely like xenophobia is definitely a big factor with a lot of the hate she gets.
So, and you could totally dislike her. Like, I honestly don't care, right? Like, I don't think even Andrew cares. Like, you could totally dislike her. You could totally be like conservative and be like, I actually just don't like that person. But there
Well,
is,
yeah, there's a difference between disagreeing or disliking like ideology and stuff, but then being like, making assumptions or hating someone for like their religion and shit.
well, you know what the thing is that also a lot of people that say that they're being racist towards her, they actually say that she was racist because of comments she meant about Jewish people that she said in the past. I forget what exactly those comments are, but I've seen it on the news. I think it was either Fox or Newsmax.
Yeah, I mean, even like
Yeah.
liberal stations got on their case about that, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. Because she was talking about moneyed interest, and it was in reference
Hmm.
to like an Israeli lobby, which obviously all lobbies have moneyed interest. It's not just a Jewish thing, right?
Well, that's the problem when
I
you
thought that was
bring, yeah, I mean, there's some people that play the card, and it's unfortunate because it's like there are actual problems going on. And when you use that card, it's kind of like, well, now
yeah.
we're back to square one, and it's like you can't figure out anything because you have to be that way. And
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And those people be that way because they want to take advantage of the situation, right? Because they want to win the
Yeah.
situation. They don't know how to get, you know, the outcome to be on their side if they don't play that card. and that's where the problem is, right?
Mhm.
So, but yeah, so they got kicked out. Omar got kicked out.
Well, she's still
And
left,
well, she
but
got.
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's been a crazy week. It's been a crazy week. Just
It
when you
really
think
has.
that you're not gonna have enough news to do 2 shows in 1 week, we absolutely do. It's crazy. But
Speaking of news, you want to introduce the next topic?
oh yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that a lot of people could come together with and say that this is wrong, but I don't think they will, unfortunately. But let me get into this. Clarence Thomas, everyone's favorite, has reportedly been accepting gifts from a Republican megadonor, um, Harlan Crow, for decades, and he never disclosed it. So if you don't know who Harlan Crow, I believe I said that right. Uh, he's a developer. He's a real estate developer. He owns a company, and he's been giving money to Clarence Thomas. That is basically like what you need
The
to know.
gist of it.
Okay, that's the gist of it, right? That's just summarized version, uh, the brief version, right? Republican megadona Harlan Crow has been giving him money for the past like 20 years. Okay, more than 20 years. Did not disclose them. The justice has stayed at the Crow's resort every summer for more than 2 decades, right? So ever since he
Jeez.
started giving him money, yeah. And this is according to Publica, okay? It reportedly makes regular use of Crow's private jet. Um, Thomas may have violated federal disclosure laws by not disclosing his yacht and jet travel, and that the stays at Crow's resort may also have been required disclosure because the resort is owned by Crow's company rather than him personally. So that's where it gets a little, juicy, I guess you could say. Um, and that's something where you could easily see, and like, I think that this could be a problem. But if this happened to a Democrat, oh man, you already know. I saw that smirk on your face. They would be all over, Newsmax, Fox News being criticized for this and that. I think this guy should be slammed just as much as the next guy. I don't care what party or
I
what
mean, there's
party
a
member
really pretty
brought
easy
you there,
example, right?
right?
Because I mean, think about the reaction to like the whole insider trading thing with Pelosi, right?
Which
Like, well, just
was
like
it?
the fact that I think it's pretty obvious, right, that she does like insider trading.
Ah, yes, yes.
Like, like the right loves to talk about that as like obvious corruption and like kind of to expose her and stuff. And I think many and most on the left are too, obviously.
And they
But I don't,
should.
as they should be, yeah. But there isn't that same willingness, I think, to go after Clarence Thomas because they kind of know he's like a very essential figure, and there's other controversies with him as well too, relating to his wife and her involvement with things like January 6th, right?
Didn't he
And just
vote
in general.
against? I don't know. Wasn't he proposed to something against racial marriage? It was something on that. I'm not too sure if that was
He's
true or not.
no, I don't think he's ever said anything against against interracial marriage, to my knowledge.
Okay.
But you might be referring to is after abortion got overturned, he basically was like, we should relook at the laws in relation to sodomy, in relation to gay marriage, and see like because they follow the same logic as Roe v. Wade.
Okay.
So he mentioned those two, I believe, but didn't mention interracial marriage, even though interracial marriage also follows that same logic.
Okay. So that's how the tie-in happened. Because I remember there was some kind of tie-in with that, especially right after that court case.
Yeah, yeah.
And man, like,
And there's also like there was something that like he voted on that he had like a direct like interest in too. But there's a lot of corruption with this guy. It doesn't really get talked about like as universally, unfortunately. Like it's
yeah,
kind of
no.
like more like just people like who are more liberal or left wing will talk about it, which is very unfortunate. I think it's pretty apparent, and I mean, from like the right wingers' perspective, it makes sense to a degree why they'll be like that because obviously, like if this guy does get impeached or like he's forced to resign, like he'd probably get replaced by at most like a moderate judge who's like not gonna go as far. Because to the extent that the right is gonna really get any victories in the current day, it's gonna be because of like already kind of set up like federalist judges that we have in the Supreme Court, in the state courts and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Like that's kind of the bedrock of like the modern conservatism that really is prominent. And the courts are also the reason why, like campaign finance is so corrupt. Because money equals free speech, right? That's kind of what they've ruled time and time again. Corruption basically is legal at this point. Bribery, like on an election front. So
Oh yeah.
if they were to lose, their conservative judge and get him replaced with like a liberal or a moderate, then they lose a lot of leverage that they have.
Oh, absolutely, dude.
You know.
And
So
I mean, like I don't think would he get booted off the court for this? I mean,
yeah. I don't think he'll get kicked off. Um, there are calls obviously to have him be impeached right now by a lot of like more liberal politicians and media figures, but the likelihood's pretty small just because right now like Congress overwhelmingly is pretty center right, right? 'Cause we have like slim margin in the Senate. The House is more conservative. The presidency, it's like a more centristy figure. I don't think they really want to entertain this like Supreme Court fight just purely for an optics point of view.
hmm.
I think it's more likely that they kind of like try to write it out more than anything, because that's kind of what they've been doing up to this point. Unless something really crazy about Clarence Thomas comes out, and there's a lot of more pressure than already is. There's already
Oh
so
yeah.
much, so it's really hard to tell, right? Because obviously, when the abortion stuff came out, there was a lot of protest, and there was a lot of like protections and stuff given to the court justices because their lives were threatened and all this stuff. So it's definitely something to keep your eye out, right?
Oh, definitely something to keep your eye on. But like you said, I don't think anything's gonna come from this. I think it's just kind of one of those things that are just gonna be like, oh my god, I can't believe he did this, and then like that's it. No one's gonna care about it in 2 weeks from now. They're just gonna not like
Yeah.
him because they didn't like him previously. It's not gonna be because of I mean, this they added to it, but it's not really gonna do anything, right? I don't think so, at least, and neither do you. So,
I mean, I don't know, because it's also tough too, because the courts are already kind of at their like people in general, not just partisan people. People in general have like the lowest view of the Supreme Court ever, right? Like most people like don't think it's like valid, like at the highest level, basically, I think ever. So if you're like, I guess if you're like the Biden administration or Congress, you could either think, oh, maybe we should do something about this, or maybe we should try to let this slide under so we don't put too much focus on this and make people lose even more faith,
mhm.
right? So I mean, those are both, I think, things that could be happening, like that people like are grappling with. I guess that could make a difference.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, I pretty much agree. I don't have anything else to add. I don't want to ramble and say something else. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I disagree. You know.
True.
But if you want to go into and introduce us to the next topic.
This has been going on for like, I feel like reading about this for like almost a year. This in France they want to raise the retirement age. They're trying to go through with that. Which as an American, pretty modest, honestly. 62 to 64. But
Man,
regardless, I mean,
where was our protest for that?
right? But they protest like crazy in France.
Oh
Now.
yeah, man. They're
Like
they're really fighting this thing.
yeah. So there already was a lot of debate and a lot of contention about doing this. But I think what really pushed it over the edge in the past, like I want to say month or so, is that the Prime Minister of France, Macron, he used a provision or a special article in the French Constitution, basically to override like the voting part of um of the process to make this into a law, to override it and basically give him the authority to just make this a law. I don't think it's been implemented yet, but obviously, like, it basically skipped the parliamentarian vote. It's a bit different how Congress works, so excuse me if I misstate something, but that's the basic gist of it. Like, the French Congress basically was gonna vote on it, and they couldn't vote on it because he just skipped that part. And I think they have their own courts that are gonna like that can like stop it from becoming a law, and I think that's basically what the crux of these protests are trying to do right now. And yeah, I mean, really, what they've been doing, it's been like a persistent, pretty unified front. A lot of people are trying to, not like to change, and there's a lot of hypocrisy too, because a lot of these people who like trying to push like all of the business people who are trying to push this law through and argue for it are people who are are probably going to be retired before it goes through, and they're on that thread where they'll be like 62 and then they can retire for you know the middle class or the peasant people turn 62.
And
So
that's
it's a
really the
very
problem there.
hmm
That's really it.
a lot of hypocrisy, a lot of undemocratic practices going on. And obviously, I mean, people. There was even a something that happened where he was on an interview. This went kind of viral on Twitter, where obviously he's being framed as like an elitist by a lot of the people critiquing him. It's a pretty accurate criticism, honestly. And he's being interviewed, and mid-interview, he's like taking off his watch because the watch is worth like $80,000 or some crazy amount of
Oh, dude,
money.
I think I saw that. You know what? I think I
Yeah,
saw that.
he
Oh
probably
my
did.
god.
Like, he's, like, wearing it in one part, and then, like, he puts his hands down, and he raises them up again, and there's something in his hand. So,
Yo, man, I
it's
totally
just
forgot about that. Wow. Thanks for bringing that up. Because I totally
yeah.
forgot about that. And that is really an important piece to what you would call, I guess, really the peasants, right? Everyone really like a peasant under that whole, the Social Security. Okay, we're going to raise it so then we get it, but you can't. And man, it's so screwed up how that is. I mean, if you work hard for X amount of years and you're promised it at 62 and it just goes up. I
Yeah,
mean,
really.
you want to enjoy your life, all right? And to walk around a watch like that, you're basically walking around and being like, okay, these peasants here. That's basically what it is. I think you said it right the first time when you said
So,
that.
it's even stupid because it's like, okay, it's one thing, like, if you just didn't wear the watch for that interview, right? Like, if you just wanted to be like, "Okay, like, I'm not gonna wear it because I don't wanna look like this." Or, like, maybe you're in the interview and you're like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't have worn this," right? Okay, but why would you take it off mid-interview? Like, people aren't gonna notice that. Like, it's just so stupid, right?
Dude, like, listen, man, he wanted to walk in with the drip. He wanted to get drippy. He wanted to show off his wrist. And then he was like, wait a second, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe this is not the right thing to do.
Yeah,
So
really.
now you just angered a whole lot of people. You angered your own people.
Literally.
And man, I've been seeing videos, dude. I've been seeing videos like they walked into like the theater, they held that. The blockage. You see the blockage on the highways?
Yeah,
Like it's
insane.
actually insane. If you go and you look maybe on Twitter, YouTube, whatever it is, you could find this stuff. And it's really crazy because I feel like it's not talked to as much as it should. But that's also because we're gonna have our own social security problems soon. Uh, I mean, we've been saying it for years, like as a country, right? A lot of people have been saying we're gonna have social security problems, but I think as the years go on, it's just gonna get closer and closer to that problem. So I don't think they want to advertise that as much to show like how powerful people can be if you bond them together. So the whole point is let's separate people and let's barely talk about this issue because we don't want them to band together on an issue like this. Why would what? Why would we?
Well, I mean,
If
let's
anything,
talk about the Social Security issues in America. It's really interesting, right?
oh
Because
yeah,
obviously there's discussion right now that cut Social Security, and it's like a program that, despite kind of being like kind of socialist, right? It's very popular. I mean, a lot of people are very much for Social Security. Even most Republican voters are for Social Security.
oh yeah.
But Republican politicians, they talk a lot about, oh, well, there's like in the long run, how are we going to pay for it? And it'll burst and all this stuff. So a lot of the politicians want to cut Social Security or like try to sunset it, right, or privatize it. And
Hmm.
honestly, the biggest exception,
Imagine privatizing it. Oh my god.
I think I want to say Pence mentioned like suggested that, or Paul Ryan, like those types of. And the one who's been the most vocal about not doing that is Trump, which is really hilarious.
Well, don't forget, a lot of his base are older people,
But they're
and
all old people. Like
but
even like that's always
also,
been the constant, right?
but don't
So it's
forget,
I don't think it's just
it's
that they're old.
it's also leverage too, especially against DeSantis,
Well, yeah, obviously, like
and that's what
because
I think he's
that's
really
what
using
this.
for.
See, this is the genius thing, right? Because when a lot of when it comes to talk about this one, but when it comes to the primary, right? Um, a lot of these guys like who are running against Trump, like what makes them any different, right? Like they're basically all like pretty conservative. They agree on the culture stuff. They want to cut taxes, So the ways they try to distinguish themselves, it's like, okay, well, I'm more conservative on the economy, and it's like, okay, but being more conservative on the economy is not popular. So you're different, but you're less popular. Maybe you'll get like a couple more votes from maybe some like well-read conservative rich guy.
Listen, man, I already told you, regardless of what happens, I'm writing in Perry Johnson.
True.
I think we both are, right? We're both gonna write in Perry Johnson.
Yeah, that'll be my voter fraud.
Be a voter fraud? You gonna do a mail-in for him?
Yeah, sure.
We'll do a mail-in for Perry. Go
Imagine.
Perry, let's go. But I mean, look, you look at the primaries that's about to happen, and you look at Social Security. It's really, I think, a key issue for Trump, especially to go against DeSantis. He wants to make sure that DeSantis looks like that he's incapable or that he's actually doing the wrong things.
Well, I think the theme is gonna be, and it's I don't know if it's really working, but like right now, I think a lot of Trump's advantages is really just them coalescing around him, just in a generic sense. But the goal is to really just paint him as like an establishment figure, like Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio before him.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's like the goal, and I think I don't know if it's working exactly. I think most people will have a pretty decent view of him still. But as far as who they'd vote for, it's working in that sense, right?
Oh yeah.
So
I think that something I would want to get into as our next topic, um, is because we're talking about Trump. Let's get into it. Has the media forgotten lessons learned from covering Trump in 2016? I think that's a very valid question,
okay.
right? Um, First, I'll ask you: do you think the media has learned their lessons over it, or do you think that's going to play an effect?
I
And
think
of course,
in a
we're
limited sense,
talking about
yes, but
general
in the
election.
macro sense, in the general election, I mean that's like so far off. At that point, we would just be predicting, and my prediction would be that maybe individual commentators might have reevaluated how they kind of want to approach Trump,
Hmm.
but I think on the macro level, no. So like I think individual like political commentators will probably be a bit smarter with what they cover with Trump and how they criticize him. But the actual networks and executives are still going to want to push out any crazy thing to, boost their ratings.
Of course, look at what's going on with the indictment. I mean, he's all over the place. Trump is news. He's been
Hmm.
news ever since he started running. And it's
Yeah.
really a question of, well, if this continues, if he's on the cover of every single newspaper, the cover of every single top story going on, does this help his case going into the 2024 election? Presumably against Biden.
Yeah. Well, it's such a different dynamic though than 2016, even 2020, right?
Oh, of course it is, right? I agree.
Because, you know, 2016 he was like the outsider, the wild card, underdog, etc. And the media kind of constantly scrutinized him, constantly like made him out to be a joke. And like they made him out to be a joke, but they also did it in a way that kind of like, because a lot of criticisms I feel like at the time, a lot of them weren't valid. They were like maybe they were like true things, but they weren't things that were really making a case against him. If you already like if you already disliked Trump, then yeah, you would be fine with them. But if you were indifferent or supported him, it really wasn't a strong case as to why you shouldn't like this guy. I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that combined with like the underdog sense you got from him, really, the media really helped him, right, win, and they gave him all this free advertising and everything, as it's been like pretty widely reported on.
Mm-hmm.
2020, I mean, he was. I think the media kind of hurt him in the sense where it's like he was everything, everywhere, all the time, right? Because he's president. So on top of the general fascination that comes with Trump's like as a character, like as a person with personality, etc. Like he's also the president now. Like they actually have a reason to be doing this. It's not just like, oh, look at what this crazy guy's saying. It's like, oh,
Oh yeah.
look at what this crazy guy's saying. Like, is he about to like nuke a country because he tweeted it at like 3 a.m.? But I think it got so crazy and so unpredictable. People are like, okay, like I don't want this anymore. You know, like obviously not the only thing, but it definitely I think played a factor in. And now 2024 is so different because it's like, okay, well, it's not an incumbent anymore, right? But he's also like has baggage. He has experience, even if you want to make a case for him. Like, so people kind of know what to expect as far as the governance goes. That is a factor.
He has history.
The media has experience kind of covering him and how he's going to react and what he's going to do. So I mean, will they be smarter about it? Who knows, right?
Well,
I saw
also,
something recently that apparently I think CNN recently went through like their worst period of ratings ever. So I mean, I think
well,
that's gonna definitely influence their direction, right?
they might show him even more.
Yeah, right. Because that's what I was thinking. Like maybe they'll continue to push him or go back. Because I know in the past year there's been a push to make CNN be like a more moderate platform,
That's not happening.
but I don't know if that's gonna work. Because I mean, their gravy train really has been kind of like the white liberal rage, right? Like the rage coverage of Trump and how crazy he is and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I think, I mean, unless they really like do something different, but I don't think they really are gonna get that moderate crowd back. It's not really the early 2000s anymore. Like no one really cares about that kind of content. If you're following politics, like you're more likely to embrace some kind of extremist angle, honestly. And that's not necessarily say it's a bad thing, but it's definitely like people just like the passion, right? It's
Oh,
people
of
don't like
course.
mundane, everyday stuff.
Dude, I mean, like I said, when I went to CPAC, they're all there, and they're really there for Trump. Why? Because they're passionate. They feel like that he's passionate the way he talks. He's above everything else, a populist.
Fake one, but yeah.
Well, perceived by a group. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
kind of like you look at that, and it's like, wow, this guy really he not only is he saying what I'm thinking, but he's saying it loud and proud.
Yeah.
So people like that. People don't like it when you're dull and you're boring because that doesn't work. And maybe, like you said, nowadays it's like really hard to be boring in a politician. You kind of have to have a little bit of a character, or you kind of have to have a little like oomph into your personality when you make a speech or whatnot. Um, because Biden, I mean, he's hilarious. Not hilarious on purpose. He's just hilarious because he doesn't know what the hell he's saying half the time. But it's still there, right? Um, but getting back to it, people want that. People want that from Trump, and they see that in Trump.
Well, so do you think that the media, like, how do you think that relationship will play in 2024 then?
In 2024, I think it'll be interesting because he still never went on Twitter yet. He still never made a post there.
I mean, he makes truth social posts. I mean, like they don't get.
Yeah, but like I
I mean,
think
when he
his
tweets something really outlandish, though, like I feel like it's the reaction of the media is basically the same, right? Like they'll fixate on it and they'll show the post and talk about it, right?
Mhm.
Like
But I think that when
obviously,
people
obviously,
start seeing
not
him
as
on
many,
Twitter,
not as many people are gonna see him, but we're talking about what the media does. When the like, I think he just typed like World War III today,
he
like out of
did.
the
He
blue.
did do
Yeah,
that.
like
Yeah, I saw that.
obviously they're gonna talk about that. Like, why is the president just like basically tweeting that like on Easter Sunday? Like, what's wrong with you?
Happy Easter, everyone. Yeah, so I mean that's just the way he posts. I think it's hilarious the way he posts. He posts in all caps,
Yeah,
right?
it's literal boomer posting.
It is. But yeah, I mean, I think the media could definitely play a role into basically saying, "Oh, well, this guy maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe the economy was better. Maybe this and this," and people are going to
Well,
try and justify. Hmm?
well, what do you mean by that?
In the sense of they just don't want Biden, and they're like, "Well, maybe he wasn't that bad before pandemic." That's really what I'm
You
getting
think
to
the media is
because
gonna side with Trump in some aspects?
no, I'm saying that the people are gonna look at him from him being in the news all the time. They're gonna think about it, like, and then they go back and think about it, like, well, maybe it wasn't that bad before the pandemic. Maybe the pandemic ruined everything. And of course, we're not talking about someone who's passionate. We're talking about just average Americans who don't, think about politics all the time because they're normal, right?
Yeah.
They have their own things to do. So,
I mean,
there's
honestly,
that.
I don't know. I think even in that regard, it's like I think most people, if they're thinking in that, if they have that thinking pattern, I think they can just come to the conclusion though that a lot of these problems are still kind of related to the pandemic. You know,
But again, it depends on the
like
it
I'm
depends
talking
on the
about
voter.
like
But I
true
could
swing
see it
voters, not
happening.
like
I don't.
maybe like a couple people, but I don't think the overall majority know.
I do think though, at the end of the day, I think Trump still loses against Biden or almost any other Democrat. If he runs against Kamala, I mean, I don't even know. That would be insane.
That might be like a true coin flip, honestly.
Yeah, that might be a coin flip right there because I just don't think people like Kamala that much. But people wouldn't be voting for Kamala, and everyone knows that people would be voting for Kamala just because she isn't Trump.
Mm-hmm.
So but it could be a coin flip. I don't think he wins. I don't think there's a situation realistically at this point where he wins the general election. I think if anything, the media helps him win the primary by even larger margin than he is now. Right? You saw that his numbers went up because of the indictment. Right? Uh, if more news like this breaks, people are going to be on the most passionate people on the Republican side. They're going to start voting for him solely. And they're not even going to
Yeah.
think about the other candidates anymore because the whole angle is that they're not coming just after me, they're coming after you. And that angle right there is like, oh, they're coming after us, then I guess I got to go vote. And it's like, that's the type of mentality it is. So, if
And it
that's
all goes
if
away in
that's
the
the case,
general. Don't vote by mail.
it
It's
all goes
fraudulent.
it all goes away in the mail. I mean, it all goes away way in the general. It
It goes
does,
away in the mail because they take the votes and rip them up.
and it's like it will help him, like I said, but only for the primary. If something else happens, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of things that happen for Trump to win. I think, and it would have to be bad things to Biden, right? And 2020, I say this all the time. I was actually talking to someone earlier about this, right? I was talking about how 2020 Trump's campaign was terrible between the COVID and between Black Lives Matter and between just debates with Biden saying, "Oh, you have to wear the mask," and then he wears this big mask, it's so big, and turns out guy got COVID that week right after the debate. He was on the debate stage with COVID actually, I think, but it's like, man, all this stuff came out and he was just doing a poor job at campaigning. Then his whole thing was "Keep America Great," which I think was a terrible slogan for the time, because even if you like Trump, 2020 was not a great time. It was far from great. Okay, and I think most people know that. Most people turned around and said, "Yeah, no, this is not great at all. If anything, this is awful." So if you were to take the years, if you would take 2017, 18, 19, and those Trump years, you would go off of that. If
I think
you,
even that's kind of a weak case though,
I don't think so.
because
I
what
don't.
was great, you know, like because
No, no, no. I'm not
that's
going off of the fact that it's great. I'm just saying that
but that's still a poor re-election can't like it's still a poor campaign. You know, it's not like COVID not happening would have made it any better.
I think it would have made it better, because I think we even went back on it. I think we said it numerous times. We said that he would have beat Biden
He would
regardless.
have won, but he wouldn't have run a good campaign without COVID. It still would have been terrible.
Uh, no, it would have been better.
It would. I don't agree. There's no way. Because like, what would have been different about the campaign? Not the circumstances, but the actual campaign.
The attacks with certain people in like BLM would not exist.
What does that have to do with COVID?
Because I said BLM and COVID. I did
I'm
mention that.
talking. I'm
Oh,
talking
you
about
want to
COVID.
talk just solely on COVID?
Yeah.
We could talk solely on COVID. Well,
I mean,
on Mhm.
even I don't know. BLM's like a thing that's existed for years though.
Yes,
Like
but
obviously it blew up in
it
2020, but like
blew up. It absolutely blew up in 2020. The protests were insane. You had
no, I mean,
people come
but at
out
that
in
point though,
droves.
if you're gonna say everything that happened in that year, it's like okay, if literally anything happened, he would have reacted terribly and it would have hurt him.
But that's what I'm
That's
saying.
really what
That's what
it.
I'm
But that's what
saying.
I'm.
His reaction was terrible to it. But your reaction can't be terrible if none of this stuff happens. You can't
But
react to something that
my
doesn't
point is
happen.
that okay, there's no merit to saying anything about it was good because I think no matter what, I think he just ran a bad campaign.
I
You know.
think I think his slogan should have been, and I said this to you. I think we both agreed on this a while ago. His campaign should have been "The best is yet to come."
Yeah, that would have been better.
That would have been really something. The best is yet to come. That solves everything right there. It's like, oh well, you're not keeping America great because it's not great yet. So the best is yet to come, I guess. It just makes perfect sense. Uh, Campaign wise, like I said, the slogan was bad. The speeches were pretty bad. The interviews were bad. Remember the interviews with COVID? I mean, that's why I said COVID played a role, and so did Black Lives Matter. Look at the interview, like I said, with the guy. I think he was from HBO. I think it was. The interview was hilarious, but it was terrible for him. I mean, there's a lot of interviews and a lot of spaces where he was at that did not help him at all, and it would have not been this bad if neither of those two events have occurred. I don't think so. I think the campaign, because also don't forget those interviews carry along with the campaign, and that's another reason why I'd say that if those two things didn't happen, he would have ran a better campaign. I'm not saying it would be a great campaign, but it would have got the job done. That's really what I'm going with here.
Well, I mean, yeah, if COVID didn't happen, he probably would have won because there wouldn't have been as much urgency
Well, there you go. That's what I'm
during regard.
saying.
But that doesn't make the campaign good.
Absolutely,
He's an
because the
incumbent. Of course he's gonna win. The fact he didn't is really pathetic.
but you say of course, but then he didn't.
Yeah, because of the circumstances and how he reacted to them.
That's what I mean. But his reaction is a part of his campaign, is it not?
I mean, in a technical sense, but the themes of the campaign would have been the same regardless. Like that's what they were playing. That's why they went through with it. Like obviously if they knew COVID was gonna happen, they probably wouldn't have said keep America great. They probably would have had something relating to COVID, but they planned out keep America great because we won and we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
keep winning, like
I mean,
that was the theme. That was what they were gonna go with, but even without COVID, that still would have been bullshit. And that kind of goes really to the greater issues with the
but
Republican agenda, right?
but that's what
Because
I'm saying though. If with COVID happening, he didn't adjust to that. That was his problem. He didn't adjust to any of the things that were going on.
yeah, well, It's not surprising.
But that's what I'm saying. He didn't run it the way it should have been ran.
Well,
And not
yeah.
saying that's like, oh, I have the perfect
Also, I
solution
mean, his
here.
record isn't gonna line up with what everything he wanted to do because there is no like cohesive ideological bent to this guy, right? Like he just kind of wants to do what makes him look good, but also wants to like do what's in his best interest as well.
Mhm.
So
I mean,
I
like
mean,
you
he
said
effectively he
earlier, he's
effectively
got.
governed like any Republican, so like he's not gonna have like this, these working man populist credentials when it comes time to run for re-election.
Oh yeah, like you said earlier, he's got baggage, and he's got history. So, and I mean, I guess you could say he had baggage before he ran, but now it's kind of like everything's political that he did, right? Because he was in office, so that holds
I
more
think
weight.
something that we don't talk about as much when we talk about this too is I mean his opponent, right? In 2016, like Clinton wasn't a good
Oh
like
man, she
like
was terrible.
she was the perfect foil for him in 2016.
Absolutely. I mean, you could
Because it's like
look right at her and be like, all right, that's just a corrupt politician. Like, you can't
yeah,
fool me.
corrupt politician, like really like kind of amorphous, more she came off as more amorphous than Trump himself, even though they're both very amorphous in that sense where they don't really believe in what they say at all. But it kind of reads more with her because he at least kind of has like the conservative bent, like kind of what to expect. Whereas with her, it's like some people didn't know what to expect, right? That's why they kind of pull the lever on it, right? As they
Oh,
say.
absolutely. Yeah.
But I mean, is that gonna happen again? Like
Yeah. I mean,
Biden's
it'd be rough.
Biden's honestly like a better politician than Clinton. Not saying he's like great, especially when the way he
No, no,
ran,
no, but
but
you're saying
like
as a politician, meaning like as like policy wise or as like whatever it is.
but like he's more likable, right? Like
He's
he probably would
well,
have beat Trump in
so what?
2016. Like I've told you that a couple of times. Like if he ran, he probably would have just won.
I would see. Usually, I would disagree, and I told you I disagree. But also, then I found out that at the Democratic convention, he also had that really powerful speech at the end that
Yeah,
we
I
see
mean,
on TikTok all the time. It's like, we will never, ever, ever let our country down. And then,
yeah.
he said, we're America. He says, we own the finish line. Dude, that is such a powerful statement. I mean, that's real. If he was the guy, I mean, that
I
would
didn't
be
even know
insane.
that was from the 2016
Me neither.
convention.
Like, I just found out like just because it was on TikTok, and I was like, oh, well, when was this? And I was actually looking up stuff to do our intro, and I did the opposite. I was gonna do firm, patriotic, cool speeches, and then I just did the opposite. I just so I was gonna do the opposite, but that's how I found out. I was like, oh my god! I was like, it was in 2016 at the Democratic convention. So there's a possibility. I don't know. Um, but we'll see what happens with the media and how they address all these different types of news and from Trump, right? All these new like allegations or whatever it is to come out, because there's definitely other things brewing that we don't know about. Um, and yeah, so that's all I have to say there.
Yeah.
Um, I know there was one thing you wanted to mention about before we go off. We have like two extra stuff. Uh, and one of them I think you want to mention is with Tom Scott.
Scott Walker.
It was Scott Walker.
Yeah. Which actually it kind of plays into this because we're obviously talking about electoralism as it pertains to the Republican Party. Um, as you know, as in our last show we talked about this. There was two elections held, special elections. The more progressive / left wing side won on both of those cases. It was a Supreme Court justice in the state of Wisconsin, and it was the mayoral race in Chicago, Illinois. So it's been a pretty consistent theme since 2016, honestly, where like Democrats are honestly for the most part either winning pretty convincingly or overperforming in areas where they shouldn't be winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the general dislike for Trump is a big factor in that. And I think in 2022, in an election that the Democrats were supposed to lose pretty badly, they ended up doing really well given the circumstances, because not only obviously the issue with Trump, but also abortion, the increasingly radical rhetoric on when it comes to the culture war from the right. So like Republicans really have like a stain right now on them when it comes to the average voters. And a big section of this is the young population, who are far and away, I think, the most progressive generation in like American history, modern American history at least. Like just how they vote and like how they, are in a lot of ways, like they're super progressive. And when Scott Walker notices this, and he says that young voters are in fact the issue, right? He points to how like there's massive voter disparities between the older population and the younger population when it comes to voting for Democrats versus Republicans. And, you know, a sane person would look at this, right? Would point this out and be like, why are young people so like hate us so much, right? In the Chicago race, a big reason why Brandon Johnson won was because he painted his opponent as a Republican, right? He said, "Hey, this guy's basically a Republican," and that was a big reason why people looked at him and were like, "Okay, well, I don't want to vote for a Republican." Obviously historically liberal city and stuff like that, but like it's pretty like there's a reason why people are more liberal, right? So maybe reflect and say, hey, maybe our policies are too extreme, maybe we're not looking out for people. But no, Walker does not believe that. He believes that the reason is actually because of radical indoctrination, campuses and schools, social media, and culture. And he thinks that the answer is by countering it with conservative indoctrination in these fields, which, I mean, maybe, but for the most part, there's already a lot of conservative institutions with the explicit goal of spreading, conservatism to young people, right?
Hmm.
Think like what Charlie Kirk does, right? With what is it, Turning Point?
Turning point.
Like their whole thing is being a thing for college age people to learn about conservatism, become conservative. When I mean, the reality is that they're not really getting like a bunch of turnout and a bunch of young people. And um, a little known fact, like conservative, like the Republican Party is much better at mobilizing like their base of voters and like their people than the Democratic Party is. They put a lot more effort and they're much more online and in tune with what their base wants. You can tell by like how a lot of the elected officials interact with their people online. If you like look at like organizing, like the Republicans put a lot of money in media figures, they put a lot of money in like schooling and stuff like that. They're very like put together in that aspect, and despite that, most young people don't like them still. They hate them. So, I mean, are they just brainwashed and indoctrinated? I mean, I wouldn't argue. I would say no. I think they kind of looked at what they have and look at like the issues of the world. Look at like all this, like the wealthy people who have all this wealth and power. They can't afford college. They can't afford, they're in debt from like just to travel. So there's all these problems. I mean, depending where they live, I mean, their lifestyle is kind of under attack like every other day. So what do you expect them to do, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I said that it was gonna be a small thing. I didn't realize how big this was. That's crazy. But I mean, no, but I definitely, I
It's
mean,
true. I mean, because
no, no, you're right on
it's
a
like,
lot of this stuff with younger people. When people,
mhm,
and especially when people say that younger people are the problem,
this isn't as much of a
you
trend these
also
days, but it's
undermine
the
them.
same. It's the same thing with like, when like for a while, a lot of the Midwestern like factory type states like Pennsylvania, Ohio's still like this. Like they were trending to the right for a while, right? Like they were voting more Republican because the Democrats kind of abandoned like that like union style that factory style for a long time. There are more Democrats who are embracing it more recently, so it's kind of shifting back, and there are more factory jobs, in the past couple of years, so that's helping too. But in general, I mean, there was like a long trend of them going more towards the right, and liberal media was like looking at them and being like, "You're stupid. How could you do this?" Like it's kind of a similar thing, right? Like they're not really looking at their own problems and seeing like, okay, well, why are we losing these people? It's, well, they're wrong, these they're brainwashed because of Fox News or because of liberal like schooling, and it's like, well, no, I mean, they're people living their lives, they have problems, and they see that the people that they've been told to vote for, or that something that they can vote for isn't helping them or making their problems worse. So they're going to look elsewhere. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. I mean, you can debate that, but just saying like, "Oh, you're stupid for doubting like the authority of the party that should be in charge," without really providing a reason for that, it's kind of ludicrous, right?
Oh yeah. When you wrote this, did you mean to write uh Tim Scott?
I put the wrong name in, and
Yeah, I
I was
saw that. I
actually
was like,
checking it.
I, don't,
I was
I was
checking it
like,
as we.
I was
You
trying to
know.
think, Tom Scott. I'm just thinking, I was like, wait a second, you probably just like mistyped or probably was thinking of something else or whatever. But but yeah, I mean, absolutely. Young people, they're leaning more left now, and people are asking why. And also to go into that, it's kind of like, well, we have this thing called the internet. So there's a generation growing up on the internet. It's not just like millennials where, oh
I think
yeah,
that's the biggest thing in terms of culture as to
I
why,
know
like,
AOL and all this other stuff. I was like, okay, that's great. And I mean, I grew up with AOL too, and I think Andrew did too. Like, we're part of like that, like young Gen Z. So we're like the older
early Gen
people
Z.
with the early Gen Z, right? So it's like we get to understand all that stuff. We got like the last pieces of like millennials' memories, if that makes sense, from their childhood, which is great because we grew up with great stuff. I think, right? Game Boy, N64, all this stuff. I thought it was great, but we really know technology and we know how to use it. And so when you just go on Google or any of these other search engines and just type in whatever you want to type in, you can get a list of facts all right there. And there's no sense of watching the news. Do you ever just see a young person say, "Oh, I can't wait to go home and watch the news"?
Yeah, like they're not
You
getting
know what I
information from the
mean?
news from the internet, right?
Right? Yeah. So it's kind of like they're
And you
not
can
gonna
talk to a lot more
grab the
different
news
types of
from there.
people too, right? So like socially, they're gonna like definitely have a more open minds to a lot of these things and not really fall for the narratives as easily when it comes to that section of it. And in terms of the economy and them being like a lot of people are being more open to things like socialism and stuff. I mean, like I said, the wealth inequality has kind of exploded. Like basic living functions to live a fulfilling life are so like inaccessible to so many people. So
I
yeah,
think
I mean,
this
young
goes.
people aren't gonna like really be clamoring for more tax cuts and more like austerity politics.
I think this goes to another clip, right? With I think it was Destiny. I think you know which one I'm talking about, where he asks the question of, well, what is one thing that America did that Gen Z should be proud of in their lifetime?
That's true. Actually, I forgot about that. Like, cause
All right, and that's something that is a genuine question, and you could ask
that's
almost
to the
anybody, and they'll say nothing.
that's to
There's
the idea
nothing.
of Gen Z not being proud to be American, right?
Yeah, it's also like a weird mix of like millennials and Gen Xers. I feel like,
Hmm.
but like
Well,
but like
young people, but I think
more
that
so
that
Gen
clip in
Z and
particular was
millennials.
talking about Gen Z. Like they just aren't proud anymore, right?
Oh
And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's a similar thing, obviously, because they're more that kind of goes with being more progressive is kind of like less kind of patriotic. Like that's kind of the trend, right?
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the last thing you can maybe say is like it's like killing Osama bin Laden, right?
That was probably the last time America, and we saw a clip on that, especially on TikTok. It's like everyone
Like
was so happy when we killed Osama bin Laden, and everyone banded together over it.
yeah,
There was even when I was watching I think I was watching a was it Raw or was it was a wrestling, maybe it was a wrestling pay-per-view. I don't remember what it was. It was a pay-per-view. It probably got off of DVD the next day. Right? And John Cena says on the microphone that we after his match, he said we have shot and killed Osama bin Laden. The whole crowd cheered. When was the last time you could think where everyone could just bond together like that? Like everything else is so controversial now, where it's like, ooh, we did this. Oh my god, we did
I
that.
mean,
It's like
when it
we
comes to that though,
banded together.
do you think moments like that are just gone?
Do I think what?
Because I mean, do you think moments like that are just gone in general though? 'Cause I think there was a short while where the Ukraine war was kind of like that, where everyone was just kind of like, yeah, this is a thing we need to like support Ukraine and
Yeah,
help
but
them
it's
fight
not.
Russia,
It's not.
but then that
It's
turned into
not.
like now it's like a partisan thing, kinda, right? Like not fully, but
No, no, but absolutely though. It's like they are a little bit partisan on it, and you'll look at that and you're like, oh well.
yeah,
So we don't really have anything, but for America's sake, we don't really have anything that for Gen Z is for us to be proud of. I mean, me and Andrew, we will fly the American flag. I mean, you see our channel. Look at this. We got the We the People behind us. As if you're watching us on YouTube or any type of video website that we have on, right? Mostly YouTube. And it's like even on our Twitter thing, we have the American flag on our handle, and we are proud to be Americans. We are patriotic. But a lot of Gen Zers, a lot of younger people aren't so much. Though we would agree with a lot of things that they say, doesn't mean that, they're not patriotic. They are. They just don't want to fly the flag all the time because for some reason I hate this stigma. We talk about all the time. The American flag is uh, for Republicans. And I hate that so much. It shouldn't be for one side of the people. It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't. But I think that America is really going to have to do something where we could all come together and say yes. Something in the Gen Z life form where we could say, okay, in this generation, we did this. You know? Like something really big. And I don't know when that next thing is.
yeah, it's hard to say, right? Because like they
With more
honestly,
things being
it's really
split,
crazy.
too.
Because I think what we could have, yeah, like a good example, like we could have invested in green energy. We could have been like a leading force in green energy, but we chose not to because we're subservient to like big oil, right? So now we're still on big oil, and China's outpacing us pretty heavily when it comes to investing in green energy. Um, and that could have been something that we could have put a lot of money in. We could have gotten a lot of workers to do, and we could have really led the charge on that.
Look, we could have did what's it called? What is it? Speed trains? What are they called?
Oh, high speed rail.
High speed rail? Like we could have been done that, and there was a conversation on that recently, I believe, right? And when they decided
Mhm.
not to go through with it. And even if you don't believe in the whole green stuff or whatever, there's other layers. There's other things that we could have done where we're like, yes, that's
Yeah. Well,
awesome. We did
but
that.
the reason why I think so many of these kind of comments and issues also are looked at that way is because of like all the corruption, right? I think that's another thing. I think a lot of young people see through the corruption. They see how bad it's gotten because there's always corruption, right? But in the past like 40, 50 years, it's gotten so like insane.
And for the people that turn around and say, "Well, they're voting those people in," it's like, unfortunately, there's corruption on both sides of the aisle. So it's kind of like you're gonna vote for one corruption over the other, but it's a matter of fact of what policy you think that they're gonna put into place. That's really what it comes down to. So
Mm.
then that right there is where people, because I know a lot of people turn around and be like, "Oh, well, they're voting them in, and
Well,
then
I
they're
think the
killing
true
the
agreement
country."
among all like working class people really comes down to the like people understand like we shouldn't have politicians like be bribed by corporations and
Oh, absolutely. But
lobbying shouldn't be the way
again,
it is.
a lot of people say, "Yeah, I agree with that." And then when it comes to election time, and it's like, well, we filled the same cycle because both people are gonna end up doing the same thing. Not
Yeah.
policy wise, but I'm saying being backed by these corporations, all that other stuff. So,
In many races that is the case, yeah.
oh yeah. So I mean, yeah, I mean, he really said something there. I I don't I don't agree with that statement, and I ask people, and whenever this video gets uploaded at CPAC, one of the questions was, how do you get young people to vote Republican? And when that video comes out, it comes out. I'm not even gonna put a date on it. Hopefully soon, but it's a serious question that I have. How do you grab younger people from Gen? Because I'm in Gen Z, Andrew's in Gen Z. We know how Gen Z is. They're not going to the Republican Party. Some of them are. Some of them watch like troll videos and Charlie Kirk videos, and that's cool.
But all they
But
really
that's
have,
not.
all they
Yeah,
have is really just trolling liberals. That's like all they really have for
that's
those
all. Yeah,
people.
that's all they have is trolling liberals and people who the weird purple hair people. That's really what they have. And if they want to have that, fine. But policy wise, to help the United States, I don't know how far that can go. And I guess we'll see what happens. But like I said, I don't think it's gonna go far.
Yeah, it's not really a winning battle. Like I don't know. I've been saying for a while. I think the whole party just needs like a whole reboot, like from the ground up.
The Republican Party,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like
They
you could
they
say
really
both,
do
but
do
like
that.
Democrats have elements of it, and they also at least follow through with the decorum thing, like universally.
But
Like the Republicans are so all over the place.
the biggest problem with the Republican Party, and I said this to someone earlier today when the conversation was brought up, the Republican Party unfortunately has too many grifters. More grifters than the Democratic Party. And a lot of
Yeah.
these politicians clearly will say anything just to rally a base and not actually care about the issues at stake. And
Yeah, I think even like like
people are gonna vote for them. People are gonna go for them because they feel like, oh yeah, they're working for me. But like, if I look at them and I'm like, you're a grifter. Like I could, like me and Andrew could definitely tell. Like, okay, Tulsi Gabbard, you going to the Republican Party? Stop. It's so sad, so sad. Not because she's gonna become a Republican. That's not the problem. The problem is why she's doing it. She was on the left, and it's like some of these principles are not upholding. So yeah, Democratic Party maybe should have never, outed her and called her this and that. Like me and Andrew agree with that. That was pretty messed up. But both these parties,
she
they
just
do
followed
screw
through
up
with what they
things.
said though.
Ah, I know.
Yeah.
But that's
But like
the
I was saying
problem is that
earlier,
there's
I
too many
mean
grifters.
the right is very well organized, and they will like if you want to say that and spread that message, they will support you. So that's why they do. That's why there are so many grifters on the right, is because there's like a pretty structured money interest there. Whereas like I mean, like a lot of people like who are insincere and liberal, like they're just doing it for their own self-aggrandizement. I mean, obviously there's corruption and stuff, right? Like I'm not denying that, but like
It's a
it's
different
not it's
angle.
not from like the DNC itself fully. It's more from like corporations and stuff that might want to help you. I mean, look at Kristen Sinema, for example. Like she sold out to all these corporations, but the Democratic Party itself kind of abandoned her because she kind of like pissed on her constituency. So now she's like pretending she's like above the fray and independent, when in reality, I mean, she's just a corporate show that's too corporate even for the Democrats, which is really impressive. Because she couldn't even agree to like lower the cost of prescription drugs, which is something she promised to do and then changed her mind on because of that.
Crazy.
So I mean, so that's not to say the Democrats are all like even mostly like right or consider whatever the matter is. It's just so like it's just that there isn't that organized instrument that's going to cover for you and support you at every turn. Like the Democrats, when they want to be corrupt and they want to play grimy, they're going to just go to the corporations. They're not going to go to the party apparatus itself. And in most cases, obviously, at the very top, it's a bit different. We talk about like Pelosi or the Clintons.
Oh yeah. But But yeah, man. I mean, I think really put more faith in the younger people. There's a lot of young people that are stupid. A lot
Yeah,
of young people that are dumb, like beyond dumb.
but this is
But
talking about the educated young people, the people going to school and like learning stuff. This
but
isn't even talking about like, oh, like
yeah.
some guy you pull off the street and you ask him like who the founding fathers were, and he's like, what's that?
Oh yeah, no, like I
Like
said, a
this, like
lot of
obviously
them.
the educated ones are the people they have an issue with because they're the ones who vote, right?
Yeah, a lot of them, like I said, a lot of them are dumb. But also at the end,
I
also
don't know. I
don't
legitimately think the Republicans would prefer young people be dumb
what
and have no clue what's going on,
of
just not vote.
course, but don't undermine them at the same time. Do not undermine Gen Z because you could cherry pick a lot of dumb people from past generations, right? So if you want to cherry pick, we could cherry pick all day.
Yeah, they're
So
educated. I mean, there's a reason why they vote the way they do, and you should try
of
to
course,
hear them out, and understand. But they don't want to, because, like you said, I mean, they're there to kind of toe like a line. They don't have any interest at all in even trying to get remotely close to
of
any
course,
kind of
of course.
productive goal for the interest of young people.
So I mean, and that's really where it lands. That's really it. And the Republican Party, like I said, they're gonna have to find a different way. They have some people that could pull in young people. I know that for a fact, but it's not enough, and they're gonna have to rebuild that party because the party is filled with nothing but grifters. And it's unfortunate to see because there are some. Well, I see some conservative values that are worth using and keeping certain traditions, but you can't come off as serious as you want to because of these people. So you just look like a big joke. And that's where it gets upsetting because it's like, wow, like this party could really be something, right? You may not agree with it fully, but it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, do you see what happened to Bud Light? You know what I mean? So like, oh, with Bud Light, they put this trans woman on, I believe trans woman on the can, and it's kind of like, well, I'm looking at, I'm like, well, I don't really care, you know. So, but they do, and a lot of the commentators do, and that's the problem. Is that we care about these little things, and we don't care about policy being put into place. And the policy that they are concerned with are the most anti-American laws you've seen. It's well, you can't have basically you can't have the freedom of expression. Now, there are certain things you could tackle. Okay, you could talk about drag queens in schools, and okay, but you're gonna talk about businesses. Oh, they can't do this, this, and this, but we're gonna cut their taxes and do all this other stuff. It's like, so what's your point here? There is none. And it's annoying to the people. It really is annoying to the people because they're like, well, what are we going to do about it? And you know what you're going to do about it? Nothing. You're just
I
going to
think
sit
the
there and you're going to watch someone complain about it. And
I
that's
think the
it.
real death of them to even like more normie people type people is really gonna be like the constant like business culture wars. Because obviously they
Oh,
are
man, yeah.
subservient. They're super subservient to big business in general, but then it's like they also want to boycott a million different like companies.
Now they want to boycott it. I'll put it this way,
I mean, they
okay?
always want to boycott. Like
Oh,
they
yeah.
they boycott way more. They
They
boycott
want
more than like actual like union people boycott like are told to boycott stuff.
they want to boycott stuff. I want them to boycott Bud Light and all these other companies and see how that goes. And that's going to end up just like Hogwarts with trans people. I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. It's not going
Yeah.
to work.
And
It
it's
doesn't do
crazy because like
anything.
that happened, and all of them had like a victory lap when the game was successful. But it's like they have like 30 boycotts like that a year.
Yeah, they have a victory lap, but then it's the other way around. It's kind of like, oh no, like, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's like for me, it's like I don't care. It's like I'm gonna play this game. I'm gonna drink this beer. Why? Because I like it. You know what I mean? It's like you want to boycott something. Boycotting can work, but you have to understand the audience it's designated towards, and you have to understand what do you put
It's
out there
very
to get
specific
people. Yeah,
circumstances.
very specific. You have to understand what to put out there to tell people, hey, this company is not good because, and it has to be something that's really going to affect the other person. Otherwise, they're not going to care. They're not, no matter how much you preach about it. So that's just one of those things where, you know, uh, how much can you really fight on this? You have homelessness in the streets. You have all these different problems, and they're talking about a trans person on a Bud Light can. You know what I mean? It's like
Classic GOP, right?
it's really insane. It really is. It's kind of like the Democrats turned around and said, "You bought Hogwarts. Like, you know how stupid that sounds? Do you have any
Yeah.
idea how stupid that sounds? Yes,
But I
I did
mean,
buy Hogwarts. What are you gonna do about it? Yes, I did buy the Bud Light. What are you gonna do about it? It doesn't make sense. These are the problems that
could you
the
imagine if there was
Republicans have
like a
to
clip of
face.
AOC or someone like telling people not to buy Hogwarts? You like see that like
Yeah.
everywhere, like
Oh my god.
constantly. But like, there's so many like clips and examples of a lot of these GOP politicians like supporting all these like bogus boycotts and talking about oh Disney this and Disney that.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah. And the Disney stuff, man. I guess we did talk about. We said we weren't going to talk about the woke stuff in the beginning, but I guess we somehow
talked about
we
everything that we
are.
wrote down
Yeah,
for today. Yeah.
yeah, we're really talking about everything. And this is a longer podcast than usual. I believe it's because we just have things written down that we wanted to talk about. We didn't get to bring this out to you as early as possible. I don't exactly have a specific date for this to be uploaded. Probably on Tuesday, if not Monday. So there's that. But seriously, there's a lot of things to talk about here, and there's a lot of problems going on, and we don't agree with their solutions. And for example, here it's like the business woke war is kind of insane. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, well, why do we care? It's like, do I think it's stupid for a company to do something? Yeah, sure, I do. Is it going to be like the whole?
Is that the problem with the
Is
company?
is that
Hell
the
no.
is that the problem? Oh, also with the company, or is that affecting my life to the point where I'm like, oh my god, can you believe this? It's like, should I talk about Social Security or should I talk about the green M&M? It's like the green M&M, of course. Depending on what show you
Yeah.
watch. So, it's just one of those things, man, where they're gonna have to stop the woke stuff. They're gonna have to stop saying, "Oh, this is woke, that's woke," because a lot of people don't really care. Okay, no, a lot of these people they don't want to see, you know, things in their face. I get that. I get a lot of people don't want to see things thrown in their face. I hear it all the time. But that doesn't mean that that's your whole argument in anything. Mental illness. What about trans people? It's like the fuck. Did we not just talk about? Did we not just tell you? You know what I mean? Like, can we stop with that?
Yeah.
So it's really something that the Republicans are gonna have to look in the mirror and say, okay, we're gonna have to start looking at popular options because this isn't working. And if they lose in the 2024 election, which they're prone to do if Trump were to run and win the primary, dude, it's over. It's Jover.
It's Joe.
So they're going to have to really look at the issues here and turn around and say, okay, we're going to have to rebuild. So it
I
doesn't
don't
look
think
like
they
that
will.
now. No, I don't think they will either. But that's just something you could hope for. And we'll see what happens with that. And that's my take on the woke stuff, right? With Republicans and if should. Oh, you can say the statistics. Say the statistic while we're at it.
For what?
People who don't want woke in
Do
their
I have it
policies.
offhand?
Was it 60%?
Well, I might remember it, but 60. Hmm.
If we don't have it now, maybe we have it for the next
I think
podcast.
it was 60% of Democrats. It was for people who are very conservative. It was like a plurality of them. Like, yeah, it was 16. Like, it was like 16% over, like in favor of it, because there was like 3 options.
Mm-hmm.
So the plurality was like talk about it less, even among like the most conservative demographic. And then like people who are like kind of conservative, it was like overwhelming majority say to stop talk about it less.
Yeah, so even a lot of people, a lot of just average Joes that are conservative, just say, yeah, no, let's not talk about this. Let's talk about actual
Yeah.
policy. Let's get this country back on track. So, um, and there you have it. That's today's show. You guys had a nice show, a nice long show. If you
Stuff to talk to.
Oh yeah, if you have a lot of time, then and you're using it to watch us or listen to us, thank you very much. And yeah, so Is there anything you want to add before we
No,
disappear?
I think that's all.
Okay, terrific. So we will see you guys next time, and you have a great day. And that's really it. Peace out. See you.